All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. If you have any questions in regards to the economic impact of the coronavirus 2019, this is the right platform to ask. 22422 is SMS line at Trevor Mbija, at Zinzi_K, at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. I have with me in studio Tony Watima, an independent economist. Thank you so much for making time. And Shiv Arora, Chief Operating Officer, Citons Investment. Thank you so much for making time as well. So there's a lot of communication now about what to do. And economists are still grappling with the numbers. I see there's a projected growth for Africa at 1.8%, over 3.2% instead. What is going to be the economic impact of this from where the economies stand, Tony?
Okay, thank you for having me. I think the economic impact will still be uncertain for now. But we are losing, I think, a huge percentage of our GDP growth. So the biggest hitters will be that we've cut supplies, global supply chains, and self-quarantine. So it means that the economic activities within specific countries will be going down. Mm-hmm. So for us in Africa is when we are starting the crisis. So it depends on where we peak and then we de-accelerate, then that means on how the economic impact will be. So it depends on how we peak, how we'll control, how we contain and all that. Will one of the main factors on how big will be hit by the crisis. But I think we'll lose around 2% of our GDP at least.
Okay.
Yes.
So the jury is still out on how much of an impact this will cause. Shiv, from where you stand, what have you seen so far?
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. Largely to agree that the jury is still out in terms of the economic impact. The only thing we can do is look at other nations and what impact it's had. But really, the extent of the virus and how far it will extend out into Kenya will ultimately show us what impact it will have. If you look at sectors such as agriculture and horticulture, which make up a large brunt of our GDP, obviously being disrupted by supply chains. Tourism is almost non-existent now. So we're seeing a lot less diaspora remittances coming back into the economy as well. So if you look at where China was, 5.9% growth, now down to anywhere between 5.5 to 4.5. Global GDP growth down from 2.9% to 2.4% is what they're saying. So if you just take the same, and what we did at Citon is take the same impact and say that GDP growth could be hit by anywhere between 10% to 25%, which means you're looking at a range of around 5.2 to 4.3 percent from a previous, say, 5.7%. So definitely going to take an impact, but I think the fear about coronavirus is the fear of the unknown. No one really knows exactly how it's going to spread.
And as a COO now, what options are you grappling with right now? You have the staff, are they coming in? Are they working from home? What are you looking at? Unpaid leave, layoffs, what's happening?
It definitely depends on the type of environment or business sector that you're in. So for us in financial services, it's to make sure that we can continue operations for our clients. In investments, you've got to continue operations for your clients. But make sure that you're putting in place extreme sanitation measures. So at Citon, it's 2 times a day thermometer testing. You have offices sprayed every 1 hour. You have hand sanitizers everywhere. You practice social distancing, less meetings. So really just putting in place responsible measures to ensure that there's business continuity and at the same time that those who work in the organization are safe as well. So we've seen that across the financial services and investment sector.
Tony, so the banks are suggesting a 1-year sort of extension of the loan if you can prove, there's a caveat, if you can prove that you've been directly impacted by the coronavirus 2019. Is this even something, will this have an impact on the people? Is it even good enough? Because then they've not even explained whether then the interest rate, does it go up, does it remain the same, what happens, what are the operating rules on this extension?
I think banks did their part in trying to help in mitigating the problem. I think what we had from central bank and the response that we had yesterday was largely banks taking the cost of this pandemic. I think it was a proper procedure because there are quite a number of companies that have serious cash flows, especially impacted from the coronavirus. Business is not moving. So you'll have to restructure those loans. And The cost is the banks are taking those costs. So if you're looking at for businesses, quite a number of businesses will want to restructure loans because many have been hit, especially in the leisure and hospitality industry. That's one of the people that there are no bookings, there are no hotels there. Hotels are not operating. So I think a 1 year moratorium that you can extend your loan will be quite effective. So we look at how banks are what is the criteria that we'll want to use. I think it should be an open one that many people can be adjusted to that. You look at many economies are doing is that one of the things is looking at how do you help businesses remain afloat. That is one of the biggest concerns about the economic cost of the coronavirus in the mitigation process that we are today. We look at how can you keep your economy as it is today and not melt down further. I think one of the things is that government has not played its part. The biggest cost that government needs to take is trying to help business remain afloat. Despite what banks are doing, I think there should be tax credit, there should be tax exemptions. Quite a number of companies or governments are trying to give direct checks. I think in some way you can refer it as universal basic income, which is that you're giving people money to spend. And what you're doing is that you're subsidizing people to self-quarantine. Because you're self-quarantining at home, you're not earning income, but you need to spend. So government is giving money so that you spend. It helps that you're mitigating the process of the economic cost that is attached to the coronavirus. So all those things need to be put together at once. Then the banks will have an effect on what they're giving. So for Kenya, I don't think we can afford giving people checks directly, because look at US wants to give everyone $1,000.
Which is 100,000.
Yes, so we cannot, I don't think Kenya can afford that. But one of the things that we can afford is that government sets a fund, or government tries to guarantee a fund to businesses that are nearly collapsed, so that you remain afloat for a period of time. You have inflows that can help you manage at a period of time that before we contain the crisis.
But then how does that work, even if you're given a fund to stay afloat, but you can't really import because there's a lockdown? So does that money help Shiv in any way?
So just to look at it from a different perspective, it's first to recognize government's done extremely well in terms of their response to the medical side. I think they've communicated effectively. They've stopped, for the large part, the misflow of information. But obviously, this is a learning for any government in the world. On the banking side, what we took away was, come and we'll have a discussion. It's not necessarily going to be a 1 year moratorium or an extension of your loan. It could just mean your principal payments are extended and you continue paying your interest. It could mean your loan is suspended. It really depends on your business, the type of loan, and you'll have to be able to demonstrate that actually coronavirus has affected my business. Because now if you're on the other side, you always have to ask yourself that, is it actually coronavirus, or is it just another reason? So I'm assuming that's what banking sector players are looking at. From the government perspective, a lot needs to be done in terms of now impact on businesses. So agreeing with Tony that we now need to see almost like a business stabilization fund. How is it that you're going to support businesses that are struggling through cash flows? What fiscal measures are going to be put into place? Is there going to be tax and payroll relief? Possibly zero rating VAT for the next 3 months, providing corporates with corporate tax relief.
But what does that do to the government itself, trying to collect revenue?
At that point in time, now it's a catch-22. You're going to have to look at the cost-benefit of analysis of saving these businesses today, and then the expected tax revenue in the future, versus letting them collapse today, and then there's no tax revenue to collect from them in the future. So,
because if you're talking about injecting money from the government, but also stopping part of the money that is supposed to come to the government itself by zero rating VAT, they really can't balance that, can they?
It's going to be a difficult discussion. I think all economies have to make difficult decisions at the moment, where you're going to have to sacrifice a current level of expenditure, whether it's current development expenditure, in order to make sure that your economy remains running. So it's more just looking at it honestly for a near-term measure, fully well knowing you shall recover it in the next 5 to 10 years, rather than do nothing now. And then you have very few businesses that make it out, especially the SME side, who don't have sufficient cash cover.
Yeah. But Tony, can we practically do that? Now, having seen our economy the way it is, can we inject funds into the businesses and also stop the inflow of taxes at the same time? Or are we going to have to pick one?
I don't think we'll pick one. Desperate times calls for desperate measures. The main thing here that all economists should be doing, and what many are doing, is that you deploy all your resources in trying to stabilize your economy first. I think it's not an issue of trying to collect taxes, because you might lose much after the crisis is gone. So you need to stabilize your economy first. And the main thing is that it's a government initiative that should be doing that. So one of the main things is that countries have been trying to put up funds, whether it's through tax incentives or tax collections or even loans. So the countries, especially within the European Union, are taking a huge loans so that you stabilize your economy, and then you can you can work on a payment plan later.
So how do you recover it later? Do you
yes. You look at countries like what you're talking about here as this pandemic we're talking about it's more of wartime. I think President Macron of France said it clearly. It's more of a wartime situation. You are trying to help the best way you can, and all your resources in government needs to be looking at this crisis that you have today first before you look at anything. And the main thing is that you need to find a way that your economy doesn't go down, despite all the taxes you're collecting. So the issue is that we need to find a way that we can stabilize the economy. And one of the things that you're asking, that is it possible to have a fund? It's very possible to have a fund, even if it's not government providing a fund that we are used to. I think government can guarantee interest-free loans so that people are able to stay afloat, especially companies are able to stay afloat. Those are the guys who are biggest hit. If you don't do that, your chances are you have a high risk of a systemic shock to the economy, and that means that you're having companies closing down at the same time. The shock will be that the economy will melt down immediately. You will not revive such an economy anytime soon. So the main thing that economies are doing is that you try to stabilize the economy for the period of time of this crisis. And you can use that whether you are using a tax incentive or you're setting up a fund through tax collections, or you can take debt. A lot of countries are taking debt. The problem is that we find ourselves in a difficult situation in terms of our physical space. We are not able to collect. We are not able to acquire more debt at this point in time. So what government should do is like looking at your budget, what can you forgo and what space can you go? One of the things is that you can decide to reschedule some of the debt so that you can accommodate the new debt that you're trying to have. I think that's one of the biggest problems African countries find themselves in today. They've accumulated huge debt, especially short-term debt that you pay most of the time. You cannot have physical space to accommodate more debt at this point of crisis. And this, when we talk about prudent economic management, you foresee for economists when they say that they foresee such a situation that there is a crisis that can come anytime, and you have the physical space to stabilize the economy through debt, because that's one of the biggest things that most economies do. You look at the US and all that, most of those things will be financed by debt. So we find ourselves in a difficult situation that we have to restructure a little bit our physical structure so that we accommodate some debt that we can stabilize the economy.
And Shiv, what's coming out of this is now the use of technology, because there's a lot of emphasis on either money banking on online, or movement of technology, selling of newspapers online. Now, when that system is so pre-planned and it's so well oiled, what will be then the ripple effect of that? Because when the system is so seamless, the people who are in between, who are doing all this work, then at some point will then be laid off. What will be the ripple effect, the impact of just going all tech?
So, firstly is to acknowledge, even as an economy, we are much more advanced in terms of mobile money than many other countries are. So it's probably one of the reasons why you saw the first thing that happened was M-Pesa limits changed. Your amount you can hold in M-Pesa changed, transaction fees waived, because it's an immediate benefit to the economy. You won't necessarily see a complete tech space. I mean, it's very difficult to weed out, or not weed out, to actually stop any forms of physical money transmission, which is essential for money supply transfers in the economy. So in terms of layoffs, we don't necessarily think that you're going to see them now. There's going to be a greater use of tech over the medium term. People preferring, if you're self-quarantining at home, the only way you can transact is possibly through mobile money or through your electronic banking systems. So there's going to be an increased use of it, but not necessarily to a point where it completely stops your traditional money systems.
All right. We'll take a quick break now. When we come back, Samuel Karanja is joining us. He's the chairperson, Importers and Small Traders Association. The last time I spoke to him, he said they were running out of stock. We'll find out from him whether it's getting better now, but right after the break. If you have any questions about the impact of this economically, what it will mean for your pocket, just text in 22422 at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, at Zinzi_K. Use the hashtag Daybreak, and I'll pose your questions to the experts here. This morning, we don't have virologists. It's not about really the virus and how it moves. It's more about the impact of the virus on the economy and on your pocket as well. All right? See you in just a bit.